friends, my name is Kim. I'm a senior artist and beauty class facilitator for Sephora 5th Avenue in New York City. And today I'm going to show you how to get glowy skin for oily skin, because even if you're oily, you still want a little luminosity. So if you got oily skin and you want to see how to recreate this beautiful complexion, stay tuned. So I'm starting with my Milk Makeup Matcha Toner. This toner is actually solid, so that means I don't have to rinse, I don't have to be at a sink, I can just one and done, apply it to my skin really quickly. I like to start at the center of my face and just pat the product in so it really absorbs where I need it to truly go to work. This one, for me, it relaxes and cools my skin instantaneously, so it's gonna reduce the amount of redness that you see. So I got that good luminosity, but not that bad greasy shine. So to further control my oil production, I'm using the Clinique Acne Solutions Acne and Line Correcting Serum. With my serums, I always like to put a few drops on the tips of my fingers. I rub my fingers together to warm up that product so it can really penetrate deeply into my skin and do its job. And of course, I like to start at the center where I'm a little bit more oily or where I have more concern, and press and roll that product out toward the perimeter of my face. So I'm using the Dr. Dennis Gross Skincare C+ Collagen Brighten and Firm Eye Cream. You want to use a grain of rice size amount on your ring fingers, start at the inner corner and tap onto your orbital bone. Because this eye cream is very active, I don't want to bring it too close to my lash line because that might cause sensitivity. So just tapping on your orbital bone will travel all the good ingredients upward anyways. So if you watched my wing liner video, you might recognize my GLAMGLOW GLOWSTARTER Mega Illuminating Moisturizer in the shade Pearl. I like to start with a pea-size amount at the center of my face where again I have a little bit more pores, a little bit more texture, and I really pat and press that product into my skin. That way I know it's really penetrating deeply, it can do its job, it can make my makeup last all day long, and make my skin look super glowy and gorgeous. And now that my skin feels super hydrated and glowy in a good way, I can move on to hydrating my lips using that Fresh Sugar Lip Caramel Hydrating Balm. I like to use a grain of rice size amount starting at the center of my lip and moving outward. There's only a certain amount of product that's going to penetrate your lip anyway, so you don't need to go overboard. I'm going to blot off excess anyway before I move on to my lip color. Having oily skin, of course, I have to use a pore filling primer. The Benefit Cosmetics, the POREFESSIONAL Pearl Primer is my new absolute fave. Start at the center of my face where I have a lot more pores and a lot more texture, and work outward where I need a little bit less grip throughout the day. It has a matte-like finish, so I don't feel like my foundation's gonna slip and slide all day long, but it does have a little bit of pearl luminosity to it, so I'm still getting that radiance, but I'm not seeing any texture being emphasized. So the Marc Jacobs Beauty Glow Stick Glistening Illuminator in Spotlight is my absolute jam. I am obsessed with it. I like to apply it to the high points of my face where I don't get super oily or sweaty first. So things like cheekbones that I want to emphasize or even the tip of my nose, I can apply a whole bunch of product there. Whatever's left over on my finger, I just tap a little baby bit right onto my forehead, on my chin, anywhere that I get super oily, just because I know I'm going to produce more oil there throughout the day. To perfect my complexion, I'm using my Givenchy Teint Couture Blurring Foundation Balm in No. 1 Nude Porcelain. I just like to put a little bit on the back of my hand. I use my No. 47 brush to pick up the product. I like to start at the center of my face where I generally have a little bit more redness. Lately, I've also been experiencing some rosacea on my temples as well, so I like to hit that first. I always suggest to start at the areas where you find you have a little bit more redness or a little bit more darkness, so that way you get the most saturation there, and work out toward the perimeter where you need a little bit less saturation. So I'm really stippling that product, patting it into my skin for all day wear and awesome coverage. So to really knock out any darkness in my under eye and to start the highlighting process, I'm going to use my Kat Von D Lock-It Concealer Cream in Light 5 Neutral. I like to start at the center inner corner of my eye because that's generally where I tend to have the most darkness and where a lot of us tend to have the most darkness because we all have a little vein that runs right up and down our face in that area. And I work it out in what we call a triangle of light. Basically, because this concealer is a little bit lighter than my skin tone, I'm placing it where my bone structure naturally comes forward under my eye. And now I'm using my new favorite brush. This is the No. 71 concealer brush It's almost like a finger patting motion, so it blends things really easily without causing irritation to the under eye, but it's not going to pick up any product like your finger might. So this leaves my concealer looking super bright and super pigmented, but it also makes sure that it looks flawless and I don't see any hard lines or edges between my concealer and my skin. So to give my face some definition, I'm going to use my Anastasia Beverly Hills Contour Cream Kit in Fair. Again, I'm using that number 71 brush, and I'm placing it where my bone structure naturally comes forward. I like to do a little upside down T down the center of my nose. I do a little bit on my chin, a little bit more underneath my eye, and a little bit on my forehead. Basically, any area that I want to bring forward and emphasize. So again, same with the foundation brush. If you want it to look more intense, you want to pat and press it into the skin. If you want it to look a little bit softer, like where the concealer meets that foundation blurring balm, you can use more painterly strokes. So to contour, I'm using the shade aptly named Shadow, which makes sense because that's what contour is. To contour the highlight of my cheek, I like to start at the high point of my ear, and I bring it in almost going toward the outer corner of my mouth, and I stop about the outer corner of my eye. My face is almost more of a round/heart shape, so I never contour the tip of my forehead, but I do contour almost between the arch of my brow and the tail of my brow to bring more focus and more height to my forehead. I'm using my same number 47 brush. Again, I like to use that same brush pretty much for everything. It's so versatile from foundation, highlight, and contour. It really does it all. Of course, I also want to blend out my temples and my jawline as well. I work downward and then down my neck. That way I don't see any hard lines when I go to work and look at myself in a mirror. We want to make sure those lines are totally diffused and it just looks like our natural bone structure. I always like to emphasize it a little bit more. Again, this is not a step that you have to do, but I just personally love contouring my nose. It's just one of my favorite parts of doing my makeup. Same thing with my number 47 brush. With this number 71 brush, that smaller version, I use that pointed tip to get the precise placement and that flatter, more angled side to blend it out. I'm really just patting on top of that line. Again, you don't want those marks to go too far out or too far in. It'll start to look a little bit more artificial, so I just pat over the lines and the placement I've already created. So the time has come. We're going to set it and forget it. I'm going to use my Kat Von D LOCKIT setting powder. To apply my powder, I like to use the new Sephora Collection Pro Sculpting Blush Brush in number 99. I know it says that it's for blush, but I find that any saturated, precise placement with specifically a powder works amazingly with this brush. I like to pat that powder into my skin so I'm really locking those areas down that I know are prone to getting oily throughout the day. It gives my skin a really natural radiance and a really natural finish versus taking away all that luminosity we've worked so hard to build. Something that will give me that really natural bronze glow, but won't overpower my skin and my look. I chose the Too Faced Sun Bunny Natural Bronzer. I like to start at my cheekbones first, because they can take quite a bit more color than my jawline or my forehead can. And then whatever's left on my brush, I just bring to my forehead and my jawline as well. And of course, I bring a little bit down onto my neck. The 2 inches below my jawline tend to never get any sun, so they're always the lightest part of my complexion. So I like to give it a little bit of extra attention with my bronzer. So to emphasize my contour a little bit more, I'm going to use my Marc Jacobs Beauty Instamarc number 40 Mirage filter. So to get that precise chisel and really place that product where I want it, I'm using the number 79 brush, which is basically just a smaller version of the brush we just used. This will give me that precise placement where I need it to add a little bit more depth to my contour. And because it's so fluffy, it actually blends out my lines as I go. To add a little flush to this glowy look, I'm using my NARS Blush in Amore. Because I'm so fair, sometimes it's super pink on me. So what I like to do is take my number 59 brush, that same brush I used for my bronzer. I dip it a tiny baby bit into my translucent powder. And then I dip into the blush. This helps to water down the color so I don't end up with a huge clown-like streak of pink on my cheek, but I can really build that color to the level of saturation I want. Again, because everything shows up really intensely on my skin, I actually like to go over my blush with my foundation brush. I just pick up the same brush I've been using this whole time. It already has that foundation, that highlight and contour seasoned into it, and I tap on top of my blush so it looks like it's coming more from within my skin versus just sitting on top. So if we're going for a glowy look, of course we need to use BECCA Shimmering Skin Perfector Pressed Highlighter, and I'm using the shade Pearl. It's a shade that works really well with my skin tone. The Pearl makes my skin just look like it's naturally glowing versus a whole bunch of product just sitting on top. In addition to cheekbones, I also like to use my Shimmering Skin Perfector to define my Cupid's bow a little bit. I find that this tip is great if you're not using a lip pencil. It gives me extra definition without having to do that extra step. I also put a tiny baby bit on the tip of my nose to emphasize my nose highlight and contour. And I bring a tiny baby bit with my pinky finger right underneath my brow bone just to raise up my arch a little bit. So to set my face and really give that glowy sheen to the top of my skin, I'm using the Sephora Collection Perfection Mist Nude Glow. This is the glowiest mist ever. It just makes your skin look like you stepped out of a wonderful, relaxing spa vacation. You're all glowy and naturally dewy. And of course, my look is not done yet. I'm missing a lip. And today I'm using the Sephora Collection Cream Lip Stain in number 13 Marvelous Mauve. It's just a perfect pink color. It pops out your lips without taking over a look. I like to start at my bottom lip to really fill in and define. For me, because I overdraw my lips, I actually press my lips together. That bottom lip will transfer to the upper lip and give me a more overdrawn shape that still looks natural. And because my skin is so glowy and my eyes are glittery, I didn't want my lips to be super matte, so I actually went back in with my Fresh Sugar Lip Caramel Hydrating Balm, that same product that I used in the beginning to give my lips hydration. I'm really tapping it on the center of my lip because it's shiny, because it's glossy. It's going to reflect light and pull that area forward. Thank you guys so much for watching. Now hopefully you can be a real glow getter like me. If you guys liked the video, please like and comment. I do try to answer everybody's comments on my videos. Also subscribe to the Sephora YouTube channel. On my days off, I'm constantly watching their videos and always learning new things. If you want to keep up with me in my life, you can follow me at CARPLUK. That's car pluck, like you drive a car and pluck a chicken without the extra C. And you can always come see me at Sephora 5th Avenue in New York City. I'm constantly teaching classes on complexion, so come see me anytime. Thanks for watching. Bye.